lighted mirror can reveal the physical flaws and the imperfections on a face, but it do nothing to reveal what is hidden in a heart. A lot of us may put up a good front, that they say that everything is well, and it might be able to kid a lot of people, fool a lot of people. But one thing for sure is that we cannot fool God. Okay? So a lot of people might see you, and you have a smile on your face. It seems like everything is just dandy. But deep inside, you're hurting. They don't know what's happening inside your heart. You're hurt. The news that you might have just received, somebody just completely just went off and just told you off, and probably in front of a lot of people. And perhaps that is why God sends people into our lives, to provide a living mirror that reveals what is taken in our hearts. The title for today is The Reflection in the Mirror. And it's taken us back into Genesis. And I'll start here with 33, verse 1 and 4. So Genesis, the first book of the Bible. And it says, now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming. And with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came next to his brother. So now here's telling us a story about Jacob. Well, some of you that have heard the story of who Jacob is, well, let's just go back a little bit and let's go to chapter 25. Chapter 25, and it's going to take us and it's going to tell us exactly who Jacob comes from, and it is Isaac. Okay, so Isaac is the son of Abraham and Sarah. And the scripture here says that when Isaac was born, it was it is an individual of what the story tells us here, and it always plays to where is always talking about a woman that is barren. Okay, so Isaac is the son of Abraham and Sarah. At the age of 40 years old, Isaac is grown. He takes on a wife by the name of Rachel, or Rebecca, should I say, Rebecca. And Rebecca is barren. She can't have any children. Isaac then pleads with God to give him a family. The Lord grants his plea, and Rebekah conceives. And the scripture says that she gives birth to twins. Can you imagine the way the Lord works? That all of a sudden here is somebody that can't have any children, and all of a sudden God blesses them with a double portion, a double blessing. And the scripture says that the first one that comes out is to be born is he's all red. And the scripture says that he's full of hair. Almost like if he had a garment full of hair. That's how hairy that the scriptures describe Esau. They named him Esau. And right after that comes Jacob. Okay? So right after that comes Jacob. And one of the things that in that time is that there was something that played real important, especially to a father, to a family. If the firstborn would be a son, that they would have a double blessing. There would be the heirs that would take over when the father is no longer. The firstborn son is now in charge of the whole family. He is in charge of getting a double blessing, a double inheritance of whatever his father left him. So this was Esau. Jacob was the second. Now, one of the things here is that the scripture describes as Esau being outdoors. Okay, he's described as being outdoors and becomes Isaac's favorite son. So when this is happening here, Jacob didn't like the outdoors. He liked being indoors. And he became his mother, Rebekah's favorite son. He was always around, helping out in the home. His brother was out hunting. Became Isaac's favorite son. So one of the times that his brother was out hunting, Scripture didn't say that he ran out of supplies, but he became very weary. Up to the point that he felt that he was going to die. And he comes to where Jacob is, and there just happens to be this great meal that is just being prepared, that Esau asked for a helping. Now Jacob turns into one of the situations is to say, well, hey, how many of you have ever heard the saying of that there's nothing's free in life. There's always a price to pay, So when Esau asked Jacob for some of the meal to eat, that Jacob replied and he says, hey, why don't you sell me your birthrights? And Esau just kind of figured, what good is it going to do me if I have my birthrights? If I die, they're just going to be handed over to him. So he tells him, okay. Jacob tells him, well, swear to me that you're going to give me your birthrights. So this happens. Jacob gives him something to eat, what was there ready for them. And The scriptures say that it's a bowl of lentils. Esau traded his birthrights, the inheritance that would be left for him, to be in charge of running the family, to making sure that the family was going to be okay. And to whatever inheritance that he was going to receive, he was going to receive a double of the inheritance that will be divided up. So there was a lot at stake. But Esau found himself at the point of death, that he went ahead and traded his birthrights to him. So we'll go ahead and just go forward, and Esau became okay. He recuperated. And it came to a point where his father now, Isaac, he was old. And the scripture says that he could barely see. And then he calls for his son, Esau, one day, and he says, "Son, I want you to go out into the field, and I want you to go out there and hunt some game. And I want you to prepare for me the dish that I love, so that my soul will have enough strength and that I might bless you." Give him his last blessings in the presence of God, of the Lord. But meanwhile, while this is happening, Rebekah, Isaac's wife, Jacob's mother and Esau's mother, she is behind, and she is listening to exactly what Isaac is telling Esau of what he wants. And automatically, Rebekah comes up with an idea. She goes into in the mode of put a plan into action. She loved Jacob in preference over Esau. And Esau was Isaac's favorite son. I see Isaac then together, and he gets his weapons, and he heads out to do exactly what his father had instructed him to do. But in the meantime, Rebekah now is putting a plan, and he calls her son Jacob, "Come here." He goes, "I want you to do this. I want you to go out into the field there, go into the where the herds are, and I want you to select a couple of the choice goats there." The scripture says kids, and kid it's a goat. As Mexicano, we call it as a cabrito, a baby goat. And Jacob is listening, and he says, "Okay." I go, "Because I just heard that your father has just told your brother for him to go out and hunt. And with what he hunts, he's going to come back. He wants him to prepare him his favorite dish. And then after that, he's going to bless him. He's going to give him his blessing in the presence of the Lord. He goes, you go out and give me those 2 goats, and I'll come up here and I'll prepare your father's favorite dish, and then you can take it to him. You can be Esau at that moment. You can take Esau's place. Jacob says, wait a minute, Mom. What if my dad asked me to come close to him and for him to touch me? I go, my brother is like an ape. He's hairy. I go, and I'm a smooth-skinned. I hardly have any hair on me. But Rebekah's one step ahead. And as you can see that it is most of the time there's the saying is father like son. Well, this one's like mother like son. Jacob put into plan of deceiving his brother by selling him his birthrights for a meal. Okay, so now he's put into this predicament to try to put one over his father by the help of his mother. And Jacob says, what if my father tells me to come close to me and he feels me? My arms don't have any hair. He's going to know that I'm trying to deceive him. And that's going to bring a curse upon me. And no blessings. The mother says, you just do what I tell you to do. And she went ahead and cut the skin of the goats. And she put them around his arms. Wrapped them on there. And all you can see with the hair. The way that scripture described it here as almost as a garment, a hairy garment. So she prepares the dish for Jacob to take to his father. And Jacob goes and he says, Father, I brought your dish. Now I try to picture this here. I'm the type of person that likes to put myself in the picture, in the message here. And I could almost see Jacob dressed up, pretending to be his brother Esau. And I see Isaac laying there. He says, Father, I'm here. He says, you're here? I goes, yes, I brought your favorite dish that you asked for. And Isaac says, well, how can it be that it was not too long ago? Jacob replies to say, hey, the Lord gave me favor. I was able to go ahead and hunt, kill the game and brought it, and here's your dish. And see, at the same time that this happened with the goat skin that the mother put on him, he also had him put on some of the clothes that Esau had. You know? Because Esau was an outdoors man. Well, he always had that scent of being out, you know, and could have been his sweat that was on the clothes, you know. So he goes and he says, well, you sound like Jacob. He says, come here so I can. Just exactly what Jacob thought that his father would might ask. And Jacob gets close to him, and I see Isaac touching him. And he feels his hairy arms. He says, but still in his mind is saying, you know, hey, you sound so much like Jacob. But I feel the skin. I feel your arms. I go, but your hands are as soft as Jacob's as well. But anyway, they convince Isaac that he's Esau. And he eats. And then after that, he gives the blessing to Jacob, thinking it's Esau. Jacob leaves. And shortly after he left, here comes Esau. He says, Father, sit up. I brought your favorite dish. And now here, Isaac is saying, who are you? I says, I am your firstborn. I'm your son, Esau. I just brought your favorite dish, he told me. And see, right then, Isaac realized that he had been deceived. Esau finds out that he had been deceived one more time, cheated out of his birthrights. First of all, in exchange for a meal, something to drink, and now out of his birthrights. And Esau plainly lets Jacob know that when their father is gone, he's going to come and take revenge on him. He's going to come. He had a plan of killing Jacob for what he did. Scripture says that after a while, Jacob leaves, and he goes and he finds himself a wife. He goes into the family, Laban there in the family of Isaac. And there he takes on a wife named Rachel. But then at the same time, he is also being deceived because he's trying to find work there. His uncle now gives him work, and he figures for an exchange of the girl that he saw at the well. But see, the father already had something else. I can get free labor. He hadn't worked for 7 years in exchange with the daughter. And here, Jacob thinking that he was working for Rachel, but his uncle was going to play a fast one on him. He actually gives him his other daughter, Leah. So now Jacob is in a situation. So now he still wants Rachel, and he has to work another 7 years for her. And in the meantime that this is happening, that he's going to work for free, but in exchange of the cattle. Now back then they had a lot of cattle, they had a lot of herds of goats, and which was their main way of surviving, of exchanging. But Jacob tells his father-in-law, in exchange, I'll go ahead and do this. You don't have to pay me. I go, but I'll make a deal with you as far as the goats. Any goats that come out that are not pure white, they have any blemishes, any streaks on them, those will be mine. Laban said, well, okay, that's good. It always happened that it's always, and when somebody starts deceiving, and it started at an early age for Jacob, that he said he had a plan on his own. That when it came time when the goats were in that stage of mating, that Jacob, when they go to the watering well, that he would bring his goats. They were different color. They weren't pure. Without his uncle knowing. So at the time when there were to be, the little goats were born, the majority of them had a high percentage that they weren't going to be pure white. Those were all for Jacob. He was getting a payback. But anyway, it takes us to the story here after when a certain time that passed by, Jacob went ahead and stayed there even longer. He stayed there over 20 years working. Now, the Lord came and revealed to Jacob for him to come back home. Jacob had been pleading with the Lord for him to give him favor with his brother. See, behind his back of his mind, Jacob was still worrying about. He was always looking behind his back because he knew that he had done wrong. So let's go back up here to verse 33. Actually, we'll go to tie it in here together, Steve. I know I think I didn't give you this one here, but it said, chapter 32, verse 1, it says, so Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw him, he said, this is God's camp. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and he commanded them, saying, speak this to my lord Esau. This your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. I have sent to tell my Lord that I might find favor in your sight. So now here he's getting ready to come back home, and he sends a messenger to where his brother is, Esau, because I have been blessed. I have all this. And he's willing to exchange that and hoping to find favor in Esau's eye towards him. In verse 6, then the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you. And 400 men are with him. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and camels into two camps, into two companies. And he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company is left, which is left, will escape. And Jacob arranges a gift for Esau. He's still in this plan. He's still thinking of how, just in case his brother is not forgiving, because his brother said he promised he was going to kill him for what he had done. So he sends his maidservants with 200 heads of goats, with some oxen, some donkeys, camels in front, as a gift to Esau. Because after them, he was going to send his wife, his first wife, Leah, their children, along with some more animals, some more herds, some more gifts. In case the first one wasn't accepted and he attacked them, then they could have a chance to escape. So let's go back to the 33, and it says, now Jacob lifted his eyes and he looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants, and he put the maidservants and their children in front, and Leah and their children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. And then he crossed over before them, and he bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Well, all this here happened, that Jacob was making a plan to try to reconcile with his brother. He had sent him up. Jacob found himself alone. And we'll go back a little bit here to 32 and in verse 22. It says, and he arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, now here the angel is talking to Jacob, says, let me go before daybreak. And Jacob says, I will not let you go until you bless me. It says, but he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? Now here's the angel is asking Jacob, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. In verse 28 he says, and he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with me and with men, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And he said, why is it that you asked about my name? The angel is asking. And he blessed him there. So here, as I have just read here, that when the angel of the Lord, and any time that the scripture says the angel of the Lord, it's God himself that is actually putting himself in that situation. So actually, Jacob had a wrestling match with God. And he will not let him go. Scripture says that he asked him to let him go before the daybreak would come. And Jacob says, I will not let you go. You might have had him in a hole that he couldn't escape. But anyway, Jacob tells him his name, and the Lord tells him, your name no longer will be Jacob, but it will be Israel. Okay. And right there, he blessed him. But when he did that, while they were wrestling, the scripture says that the angel touched his hip. And the scripture says that there's a certain muscle there in the hip that shrank. So you can just imagine, it's not so much that you have a muscle now that it's not the same as the other. So Jacob was left with a limp. He was walking with a limp. So here is that Esau now is coming, he's confronting, he sees Jacob. And I can almost see that Jacob Esau is seeing Jacob walking towards him. Jacob is just praying that hopefully with the gifts that he sent, that he was able to mend the things that they had done, the wrong that he had done to his brother. And I see Jacob walking towards him with his wife Rachel and his family. He's walking. And I see Esau saying, because he already knew that Jacob was on his way to meet him. He says, is that my brother? Walking this way towards him. See, How many of you ever pulled a muscle on your leg? And no matter how much strength you use and how much you try to walk the same way, something's not connecting. It's not responding the way you're supposed to. I remember a few times I pulled my back, and man, it's even painful just to get up. I go, but he sees him walking. I said, yeah, it's got to be my brother. In all the meantime here, Jacob is thinking, man, the messengers told me that Esau is coming towards me. He's got 400 men. He hasn't forgotten. He's coming to kill me. Behind Jacob's mind. And all this time that Jacob is seeing that, he's thinking that as he's walking over there. Time has elapsed. But he has never, in the mind of Jacob, has never forgotten what he's done. Esau runs to him, and the scripture says that he runs and he hugs him and he kisses him and makes up. Perfect example is the prodigal son. If you're familiar with that story, the prodigal son, he goes out and he asks for his father's inheritance in advance. His father gives it to him. The older brother stays and works, has extra work now, doing his brother's work. The brother goes and he blows the inheritance and then comes back. Just to be, he will be content enough just to be a worker, a servant for his father. That he played in his mind what he would do to his father. Ask for forgiveness. His father saw him from afar and he ran to meet his son. The son had rehearsed a speech over and over, a speech that he would never use. While his father was hugging him and walking him back home, that there was a party being planned in his honor. No matter how we've done, when the enemy had us, we lived in the world and doing all kinds of things of the world, in sin, in bondage of the enemy. And one day we came. We didn't want no more of that. We wanted to come. We wanted to come home. God the Father says, I sent my son. I welcome you with open arms. I don't care what you've done. I welcome you home. And by you doing what you did, of what we did when we accept to believe in him, and now there's a party going on in our behalf because we've come home. We have been reconciled back to the Father by the love of Jesus, by us believing in him. Regardless of what we ever did, he says, no more. But one of the things is, our God is waiting with open arms.